Welcome back to the Growth Hacking Culture podcast. Today we have a fascinating guest and a topic that's absolutely crucial for any leaders or frankly, let's be open, anyone looking to build high-performing teams, building a culture of accountability. Now, before we start, let's face it, accountability can sometimes feel like a bit of a buzzword, but the truth is that research shows that organizations with a strong accountability culture significantly outperforms their peers. We are talking about increased engagement, higher productivity, and even improved profitability. A study published in the Harvard Business Review found that 70% of employees say that accountability is critical to their organization's success. So clearly, this is something we need to get right. And who better to guide us than Egils Boitmanis? Egils is a tech founder, an AI advisor, and someone who really deeply understands the principles behind accountability. And he has a twist to it. He talks from time to time about Stoicism, a philosophy that emphasizes personal responsibility and discipline. I'm super eager to pick his brain on how leaders can foster a culture where everyone takes ownership, strives for excellence, and ultimately contributes to the collective success of any organization. Let's welcome Egils Boitmanis to the show. Egils, thank you very much for taking the time to be with me today. And the reason why I'm excited is that you and me, we go already a way back because I still remember approximately 3 years ago when we started this discussion about accountability. Back then, we both were like fighting to get our tech startups going, moving forward. And I still remember certain of the conversations that we had face to face back in Dubai. Man, that was a long
Yeah.
time ago. Egils, thank you very much for your time. But before that, so you have a lot of experience in helping leaders. You have been working on successful tech startups. How did you move back to this human-centric development area? How did you? What is the drive behind that?
Wow, that's a very deep first question. Yes, hello everyone. My name is Egils. I'm from Latvia. Like I like to joke, from the eastern frontier of Western civilization. And yes, so I my background is in digital marketing. I used to own a digital marketing agency of 30 plus people. I created that agency. I built that team. I hired and fired a lot of people. And the last 5 6 years, I'm focusing on more on consulting and, as you mentioned, building some kind of a tech thing here and there. So that's my expertise. And now I'm mostly doing still consulting and coaching to other leaders, to other companies. Anyways, I just wanted to add that kind of a bigger picture of the whole thing. Yes, but my story, how I went back to that human centric thing, it's something that I still go back because I'm not normal because
That's a good
I,
one. And that's a good
I
description, Egils.
yeah, but I wouldn't recommend to most of the people the things that I'm going through because I'm just keep experimenting and maybe too much. But there are people in this world. We need those kind of people who are different from the average. But we also need the averages. Anyways, what I'm trying to tell is that everything started with my first jobs until my business. The longest that I could spend in one company was only 6 months, and I changed jobs, and I never got fired. I always chose to go away myself, and obviously the only way for me was to create a business for myself. So that's what I did. I started as a freelancer and then created the agency. But after those 10 years into the agency world, I started craving personal development, and I went very, very deeply. I created spreadsheets and analyzed my life and went to Bali, did many things. And I wish to understand more about personal development. And last 5 years, it's like I never asked for specifically those events, but a lot of things happened to my life that really helped me to understand, like you said, that human part of the things. And right now, I'm like putting all the things together, the leadership, the marketing, the teams, the coaching, the AI, and adding that human centric part of it. And I can tell you that I absolutely love it. In the agency, I was talking about clicks, I was talking about marketing campaigns. Right now, even with people who hire me to help with their business, sooner or later, I end up helping them also in their personal development, also through leadership and many other things. So yeah, that's my human centric approach.
Egils, I want to add to the definition of your weirdness. So what makes you unique, in fact, rather than weird, is the fact that you have embedded in your approach to human development kind of wisdom. So you have taken a little bit on an approach that is more holistic in terms of the understanding of what human beings want to achieve in life. And when we combine that with your genuine curiosity, because what you call jumping from one place to another, I call it genuine curiosity, because I know that you have been through different paths. And what's the point about life if finally we cannot explore our wishes? We cannot validate, if we take the language of entrepreneurs, we cannot validate our assumptions about ourselves the same way that we validate assumptions about our business. Why don't we do it about ourselves? And that accumulates into a proactive growth mindset that help us discover a little bit more about ourselves, because it's not a book that will tell you, Egils, you're going to be doing that. It is our own daring experiences. And I love that about you.
Yeah. Well, that brings us to accountability. For example, what do you see as a definition of accountability?
Listen, I want to jump straight ahead to the fact that I will use the standard definition of accountability. I feel responsible for doing not what I'm the task list that I'm asked to do, but the final purpose of a job, of of the things that I have to accomplish. And a job is mainly, behind a job there is the sense of purpose. So there needs to be something like the kind of things that is going to motivate me to wake up in the morning and say, fucking shit, I'm excited about doing that. That's my personal,
Yeah.
but you know, my definitions always include swearing, Egils.
Very good. Yeah, well, why I ask this? Because I think that you can be accountable, but still not be productive. Because, for example, in my case, if I say something and I do, I'm accountable. But what if I change all the time what I do? Then I keep changing, and that is why more and more, especially in the last few months, I use the word consistency together with accountability. Because when I look at, especially now when I'm working with so many other leaders and so many other coaches and consultants and yeah, the managers of the bigger teams, what I see is that they might be they lack consistency.
Mm,
Because I have seen so many smart people, and you might say, yes, they are accountable, but they are not consistent into the things that they do and how they do it. So the first thing of the accountability, I think it's the very important part of it is consistency. So what I would add into the definition is the consistency part of it, because you have to be responsible, you have to be accountable, you have to keep your word, you have to complete what you started, but you also have to look at consistency.
mm. Uh, The problem, or one of the challenges or obstacles about this accountability is, I would say, to have a definition that and you have kind of mentioned it, to what are we accountable finally? Are we accountable to the simple task that we have defined, or are we accountable to the full purpose?
Yeah.
Which is different, because we might be wrong about the task that we have taken. Let's say that in our case, as entrepreneurs, we are focused on one single strategy about, I don't know, generating leads, or a single strategy to have more thought. thought leadership in social media, and it might be the wrong one. But maybe we are accountable to the final purpose. Is the final purpose is to be able to grow our business and to grow ourselves in the journey. So we could be so that's where a lot of people might have a real challenge. What do you think about that, Egils?
Yeah, definitely. But I would bring an example. This podcast, you are very first of all, you're accountable, but you are also consistent. So if somebody would go now on Spotify, on YouTube, and Apple Podcasts, you would see how this podcast is mm, it's being consistent,
Yeah.
and more and more people are coming in, and you have a consistent way of approaching this, and with that consistency, you learn much more than by just completing those tasks. And I think when you understand that, I really loved when you mentioned that bigger picture, right? So that is why so many people are saying you have to understand your vision, your goal, your legacy. You might change it, but if you understand it, the accountability part is much easier. Because, for example, and this is a very good question to you, why do you create these podcasts? What is your this bigger thing, this bigger legacy, and what keeps you motivated to be accountable and send me those beautiful emails, those onboarding emails to follow through, so that I would feel very welcome into this environment?
That's a super good question. I'm going to be really transparent that at the beginning is it was saying, oh, this is going to support my business. So I work in work culture, so it's going to promote a little bit the work culture voice, and it's going to uh, correlate or relate this voice of work culture with Ivan Palomino. That was the beginning. And then I thought the more I was moving forward on repeating this consistency, then I was realizing that it is not why I want to do it, because the motivation behind doing something for my business, it wasn't there. It was then I tried to understand what makes me what I like the most or what I enjoy the most in these interviews. And the fact is, what if I use it as a way of learning so that from every guest that I have, I get something where I'm learning, I'm asking only questions that I'm really interested in. That's why this onboarding with the questions and all the stuff, discussions to prepare a topic that I'm really interested or passionate about. When I understood that the real motivation was for me, instead of going through YouTube videos or instead of paying for online courses from Harvard Online or whatsoever, it was to learn from people who knows a little bit better things
Yeah,
than me in certain areas. That was the change. That is something that helps me for this consistency. That's how I discovered it, Egils.
very good. Well, if we now look at some leaders who have, let's say, managers who have a group of people, they have a team, 5, 10, 20 people with middle management, and they want to become a better leaders mm, through this accountability. I think your example is very good example, because if you want to build this environment in your I don't know, work, then you need firstly to be consistent, and then, like, for example, what are the tasks that leader could do to keep their team accountable and consistent? For one thing is, let's say, weekly meetings, and
Mm.
you could structure that meeting that you begin the meeting with where everyone says their wins. Then you go into when everyone says their lessons. And you don't know, like in the beginning, you're like, oh, I want to make more money. But then maybe you switch into, oh, maybe I will learn more. And then you might switch, oh, this is more fun. And you might change these things, but you stay accountable. You stay consistent. And I think that is one of the ways, like your example for this podcast. Whatever, you don't know what is exactly is that thing, but you push through, you keep consistency. And I think that the leaders, if they if they really want to embrace that, they need to push through that consistency. So anyways, that's about
The
that.
thing
Yeah, that
is that
brought me.
the most difficult thing for in order to develop consistency is to start, because we tend, Egils, and that has happened to me several times. We tend to procrastinate to start thinking about how can I do it in a perfect manner. And the thing is to start the ball rolling, whatever, with the mistakes you learn from that. And that drives me a little bit more to the definition of consistency, because I have in the perspective that consistency is not about being consistent about huge task. It is consistency in repeating, even if it is small little steps. And we in our head, because we have been formatted by the definition of success in our society, we tend to believe that things have to be perfect. No, go start. Do the step number one and improve from that. Iterate. And as you mentioned before, it's about the learning journey. So every time that you do these consistent mini steps, go and drag out some lessons, something that you can do
Yeah,
better, and not completely awesome change. The small little thing that you are going to be changing in order to make it better.
yeah. So and the bigger question is what those leaders on in that group environment, what could they practically do? And I don't know, the first thing that comes to my mind is like you are having their podcast, having structured meetings. Change the structure, but keep the meetings,
Eh,
keep keep them over and over again, and just keep talking about those that accountability tasks and KPIs and those kind of things. So yeah, it's just very interesting topic.
and we tend a lot of leaders tend to kill to kill the action itself, the purpose itself, instead of improving or changing something that doesn't work. Is, let's say that if we are unsatisfied about these weekly meetings with our teams, as you said, sometimes we might kill it, and that happens more often than we desire. And instead of saying what exactly is the root cause, why it could not be working, and what change can I try, experiment. I think that the definition, the dimension of experimentation is underrated. People do not dare enough to try to do more experimentation in the continuous life. And that's again one of the things why I appreciate you, and I have kept this long-term friendship, because when I look at you with your way of experimenting about yourself, this is awesome, man. This is something that
Yeah,
pushes me to
thank you.
say I should be more daring.
But I think our friendship is very much also based on because we go to the same hairdresser, and that's what
Exactly.
that's what really also connects us. Yeah, but yeah, you mentioned a very good thing, those that experimentation, right? Like the leaders and those managers of, and they need to experiment. And I think if I look back and I see it now better than ever by working with those solopreneurs, coaches, consultants, what I see is they also experiment, change one thing to another. And for them, and also for me, for so many years, it felt so simple, right? I was doing this one thing, now I'm doing this other thing, now I'm doing this other thing. But internally, I felt this flow. But for somebody else, it felt like, wow, this completely new thing. Now this completely new thing. This is completely chaos. I can't work in this environment. It's very hard. So I would bring up, we can talk deeper about that experimentation, but I want to bring this one extra thing up is communication. I think that we need to learn to communicate that, well, yes, we are changing into something else, but it is still, we are continuing on the previous thing, on the previous project. But this is the add-on. We might call it a little bit different. Like, for example, like you said, that you're going through that podcast. You might change some things. Like, for example, you might add and do this podcast with 4 people, 5 people. You might add different things, but you explain this to the team that it's not changing very much. We're just adding these few things, these few experimentations. So the first thing that I would say, communication. I think that leaders need to learn how to communicate. And my biggest recommendation, it is strange, but what or who or what has helped me the most is AI. Because because I have analyzed my conversations with other people, especially in the last year, and I can't tell you how much value I've gained, especially when you upload like 5 or 10 of your conversations, and then you ask AI to analyze what you said, how you said it, and then AI brings this like I did this in one weekend. I felt, I don't know, like a part of depression for like 48 hours because it opened so much things that I needed to like a tweak and change. But yeah, communication, that's definitely one of the biggest things for leaders to showcase that those experimentations are not something apart, but something part from the bigger picture.
Yeah, and as you say, the experimentation might be perceived by others like we don't really know what we are doing. But I mean, if you think about it, it's almost like if nature is constantly in evolution, and nature makes that the fittest species are surviving, why not the fittest ideas can survive out of our lives so that we can have an exceptional an exceptional life. I love this discussion. Let me recap a little bit some elements that you have mentioned about accountability. So you have mentioned about consistency, very important, about learning, about experimentation. You have mentioned about communication. Um, but as I mentioned in my intro, something that makes you quite unique is your knowledge or your wisdom. That some of this wisdom might have been taken from not only your personal journey, but also from your philosophical readings. And
Yeah, very good.
in particular, the philosophy of Stoicism. Um, is there any other element from that specific philosophy that translates into building more accountability with a team or organization? Is there something that we can extract from it, Stoicism, to give it back as something to consider for leaders so that they can drive amazing organizations?
Well, the first thing that comes in my mind is be aware of what you can and can control, because that's a big portion of that philosophy. Because I used to set goals, KPIs. I will have this many sales, I will have this many clients, this many revenues, which is good in at one level. But right now I set more aspirations
Hmm.
because I I get these negative emotions when the deadline comes and I feel like, I wasn't able to achieve this. I maybe did not do a good job. But once I learned about this principle and study it a lot, and then how I changed my approach towards life is that you set aspirations. And I think one example is I worked a lot with Google, and Google has these OKRs, objectives and key results, and they have these quarterly goals. I think at some sense they are aligned with that aspiration approach, because they set those objectives and key results so that one could complete maybe 70% of them. Because when they set it, they are aware that if you set them too high, well, then you will not achieve them, and that's bad. And if you set them too low and you achieve all of them, that's also not very good. You didn't challenge yourself. But if you set your aspirations or your goals onto something that is, you achieve like 70%, then okay, very good. You did a very good job. And that's that kind of approach. Even if I look with clients, and maybe some other leaders can take this, is that when you look at your employees, don't just follow exactly like this employee did this, achieved this, and didn't achieve that. Like, look at the bigger picture and try to understand what you can and what you can't control with that employee, and maybe it will turn out that that person generated something else, some extra value. So that's the first principle comes to my mind is be aware that you can't control everything. Don't feel bad if you or your team members can't control that, can't achieve something that you set. So that's one of the fun principles of Stoicism.
Egils, I am. I have always been bitching about this story about uh, creating smart goals, and now you have brought into discussions the use of OKRs, which I'm a fan of. And the reason why I don't like smart goals is that it forces you to create a number out of a journey that should be one enjoyable, that should be creative. And this creativity might lead you to find alternative solutions to go beyond the number, but more into the purpose itself of why you are doing that, you want to achieve that number. And that is highly motivating for people because it generates intrinsic motivation to find an alternative. And that's why I say ditch these bloody smart goals. They are shit. And it has been taught to many leaders in the world for the last 50 years. Enough. If you don't know about OKRs, go and find out how to implement them and why, and understand that behind the OKRs, there is a human-centric approach in order to motivate you to find alternatives and contribute more. And that's why a lot of startups are using them.
Yeah, yeah, I agree. Like, I would say you can, and maybe you create, maybe you live in that kind of culture that has those
Mm.
smart goals. The only thing that you need to add is your attitude. You add your attitude that, okay, like for example, you say, I will go outside running today, and then you go out and you see it's raining, right? And then you're like, oh, okay, I can't run anymore, right? So that's you created that measurement.
Yeah.
But at the same time, if you change your mindset, you could say, like you say, fuck it, I will go run in the rain. Or you might say, okay, I will go to the gym or I will go somewhere else. So it's, you might have this smart goal that you will run today, but change the mindset. And I think that OKRs helps with that better. You still should push yourself and go outside running, but just be positive about those things. Just accept yourself and deviate from the plan and experiment, like you said, into
Mm.
doing something else if the weather is not there.
From and this is going to be quite useful for leaders, I guess, is that from a learning perspective, how can leaders help create systems? We are talking about system processes, and sometimes mental systems that support accountability while also encouraging this experimentation that seems very important in the area of accountability.
Can you maybe rephrase
Rephrase?
that with an example?
Yeah. So, is there a way to create processes or systems in order to encourage team to at the same time be accountable and at the same time encourage them to experiment more and learn from their mistakes?
Okay. Well, first of all, what I will say is focus on what works. So many people, and I have done that mistake a lot of times, is that if something, if there's a new idea, you focus on that new idea. But the focus should always be on something that works. That's the first thing that I do when I start to work with somebody. I interview them, I send them the questionnaire, I analyze their testimonials, I analyze their video recordings and many other things because I want to understand what are their achievements, what works. For example, if you have a business and that business is generating some revenue And so that should be something that you focus on. And that, I don't know, I know that that's not part of this experimentation, but that should be the focus. You can't experiment if your business fails. So and it's very hard to experiment when you don't have enough money, when you don't have enough resources. Always take care of something that works, and always take care of your assets, and like we mentioned, be accountable for your consistent processes. And then once you have that thing in place, usually 20% goes into experimentation. You could up to 20%. I have two examples. One example is Coca-Cola. So they have, if you look at Coca-Cola, they have TV ads, they have billboards, they have, where you see Coca-Cola, that's like 90% of their marketing budget. But what they do, they experiment. You have seen those viral videos where they set up some TV campaign and stuff like that. They invest very, very little money, and most of their ideas are garbage. But there are few who turn out to be very interesting, and then they invest that experimenting budget into that new experimental idea to create this new buzz, this new approach, or with some video or connecting people and stuff like that. Another example is Google. Google has this, that employees can choose and work 20% of the time on something completely different than in their, that's their main job, their main role. And sometimes they choose to spend a whole month away. I know Google employees who have spent, they work in Europe, but that 20% of time they didn't choose, for example, like Fridays to work on something experimental, but they choose to spend a whole month in Brazil working on something completely different than their main job. These two examples come in my mind when I look at the experimentation. So encourage, even in my agency, I created like a incubator where we created that startup environment where people could come and create some kind of new ideas, and none of them really worked, but it gave this energy. The employees were like, oh, this is fun, I'm learning something new and something different from my everyday life. So that's my intake on the experimentation. Make it fun, and sometimes that experimentation part, it's not about the main process, it's about that human part, that you encourage new connections and you encourage new thinking, new projects. Who knows what might happen from them?
And you have tackled the real problem behind experimentation is that we get a little bit crazy or excited about so many ideas. And as you said, the focus should be first on your lifeline. That means what makes your team or your startup survive. And then this number is the number to remember. This 20% of the time to focus on experimentation. You can still experiment in what works because there is always a small little tweaking that you can do in order to make it work even more. But the crazy ideas or the crazy time or the devoted time for your team to working other projects, 20%, it looks like something feasible. And as you mentioned, many companies are doing it. They have a special Friday to devote in another project that they haven't worked before. And it's amazing because there is a crowdsourcing of new ideas for your current job that you can bring back. And that's amazing. I still don't understand why many companies are resistant to that idea that they can do other things and be even more productive by bringing those new ideas back to the day-to-day job. Hmm.
Well, I think I actually have talked. I just spoke with a guy who works in that kind of company, and he said that because of AI, the company has lost like 70% of their business. And what it feels, yeah, because they are not using AI well enough themselves, right? So, but
Exactly.
by talking with that manager, what I understood is that they have a culture, and they have a very good accountability culture, and they are very consistent. But they are too consistent. They are too accountable on the things that they do, and they have lost maybe some of that experimentation. And I think that those kind of if that whole culture has been built like that, then it's very hard, right? Because imagine that you have a culture to focus on what works and what is the primary objective of the business. When you hire new employees, you hire them similar to you, to the other people. And then when you grow up to 100, 200, 500 people, you have that culture. And when somebody says experimentations, for them experimentation is, I don't know, changing the color of the desk, and that's a huge change already. So I think like the biggest problem for those big corporations is who are not going into this experimentation is because they try to approach this from mm, systematic, like they read something and then they try to do this themselves, and they will have so much hard time doing this. They need to hire somebody like you to help them into this experimental growth mindset. So yeah, that's what I think is people like corporations, they need to rely more on external help if they see that they have this problem of experimentation, because there are a lot of people who have gone through that, and they would be more than willing to guide them through some kind of journey.
Mm. The problem is not experimentation as such, is about what do you prioritize to experiment. And you have mentioned a very good example about AI. When you go to a company and you discuss about let's implement a tool for AI that can help you in your day-to-day business, they go straight ahead for a novelty, while AI can improve the existing business already in order that you have the time to control a little bit more any future innovation. So uh, it is the right example, AI, to that the channeling of the energy should be first in your survival model. How can you use AI for making it better, and then for new business ideas, for new things that can be disruptive. Don't start with disruption. Fuck that! It's not bringing you money. It's zero, zilch. So start with the current model. Good
Yeah,
example,
well,
Egils.
yeah, but that's what it brings in my mind is if we look at that accountability, and if we look at that consistency, and then we add that experimentation, I think that uh, the growth culture is when you are accountable not only about those processes that work, but you are also accountable about that experimentation. About, so for the growth accountable mindset, you need to also have that, like you said, also 20% into experimentation and looking at what processes work and what doesn't, with AI or with something else.
Mm.
So that's a very good definition that's forming in my mind about accountability.
So that's a good discussion then, Egil. So if it's bringing you a little bit of exploration of new ideas, that's amazing. I want to get back about the human side of accountability, and especially a sub area that you have called the communication part. And there is a sub area called the feedback. So according to you, what role does feedback play in building accountability? And how should we give and receive feedback as a leader?
Very, you very good structured. You said it not only to give but also to get, to receive. And I think that is a very important part, because I think I was thinking about this is when we do something, right? So let's say you want to create a course and charge for that course. I think the first thing that you need to learn to do is go out and buy courses yourself, right? So you need to create that environment where you learn how to pay for somebody else who will then improve you to create what you do. And the same thing is with feedback. I think that the first thing that the leaders need to do, they need to be grateful for the feedback that they receive. And so many people, so many leaders, they when they hear the word feedback, the first thing that they think is, okay, how should I say this? How should I say that? I say No, focus on how do you react and what do you do when you receive feedback. And the biggest thing that comes into my mind, and that's also rooted very much into Stoic philosophy, is gratitude. Be grateful for whatever feedback comes your way. When somebody says something to you, you say, I will definitely think about that. I will look at that. Think, and you repeat maybe what that person said. And so that's the first thing. The first thing is gratitude. You focus, you be grateful, and you learn to accept that. The more you will do this, the better you will become at giving, right?
It's almost like feedback is part of a bigger uh, s- scope for a leader, which is the empathy. So feeling somebody else's shoes and being able to understand what is the feeling by projecting yourself in the task of providing feedback or getting that feedback. It seems to me that empathy it plays a huge role into formalizing a mental process for accountability in the team, because then we can understand what could be the reaction and we can find alternative ways to provide the right message to others and also to be able to receive. Empathy is also something that allow us to identify our own strengths and weaknesses, getting rid a little bit of the noise of our ego that says, "Oh, you're amazing, Egils." Egils or
Yeah.
Ivan, it's not about you. Huh? Uh, so it is a good exercise to practice in order to create accountable teams. What is Stoicism saying about empathy, Egils? Is there anything? Because I don't recall. Like, I'm asking you the question, and I know that I cannot even recall. Now, if I'm looking into my brain, there is a little bit about this story about receiving feedback, like learning the way of learning through others. But I don't know about empathy itself.
Well, what I can recall from this ancient philosophy about empathy is Stoicism talks about taking emotions apart from this rational view. And there might be positive empathy emotions, negative positive emotions, whatever, like, but they are just emotions and they come up from different parts of the brain. And the logical part of the brain, there's the rational part of the brain, it can help you understand that those things. So I don't know, the first thing that comes, if I really have to root this into the Stoicism, the first thing that comes to my mind is that that differentiation between the emotions and judgments, and
Mm,
again focusing on what we can control, because we can focus our own actions and responses, how we act to others. Like, for example, if we look at the feedback, right? So let's say if you are a good leader and somebody tells you you did, like, oh, you're a bad person, you like, I don't like how do you communicate with me.
mm,
And if you're a good leader, you understand he or she didn't mean that you're a good bad person. He or she meant something specific that you didn't communicate very well. So if you're a good leader, you might say, okay, let me step back. What exactly didn't you understand? What topic, about which conversation are you talking about? So you go away from that directing, because nobody is a bad person. People have bad actions, but people are good and bad simultaneously all the time. So what we can analyze specific actions. And the same thing is with feedback. Like if you look, and then when you understand this from others, imagine that powerful thing. Whenever somebody comes to you and says anything, you always see that differentiation. Even if somebody's angry and says, oh, you are a bad boss, you understand that, okay, that is personal emotions. Let's look deeper. Let's understand what troubles you. And for many reasons, people just have a bad day and it's raining outside. So when you understand that, and when you understand these kind of feedback parts, then very consciously with your rational mind, you go and you say specifically something to people. Like you don't say that they are a bad employee. You say, and that's another method in from United States, hamburger method. When you start with the bread, something good, then you
Mm,
put that criticism, that meat part, and then you finish also with something good. So you create like a hamburger, like a compliment, criticism, another compliment, and then you go to the person and you say very specifically about something like, when you filled out that report last Friday, I I I felt that this and this wasn't enough. Like you don't say about their person. So yeah, that's, I don't know. That's a philosophical thought about the Stoicism connected to the feedback.
Uh, and I like it because very often it's difficult for us. The way human beings have been constructed is that we have both sides of our brain, both parts. In fact, I don't like the word sides because it's not like emotions are in one side and rational is in the other side. But the main idea is to separate emotions. I mean, you cannot get rid of emotions, but you can acknowledge them and understand the impact that it has into your rational thought so that you
Yeah.
can provide better feedback and you can receive a better feedback. But this is not easy. In fact, man, it is still something that I'm struggling with. You know that I'm a Latino, so the emotional side is still fighting the rational side, and it will end. I will die like that. But there are some practices that help people to get better at that, like journaling or mindfulness. What is
Yeah.
your thought about this journaling, mindfulness as a tool to make leaders more accountable and at the same time improve accountability with others? Can it play a
Yeah,
role, this mindfulness and journaling?
well, you mentioned studies also at the beginning of this podcast, and there are many, many studies, and that say that journaling, these practices help you to structure your thought, verbalize your ideas. And what I can give a practical example, and there are so many things how people do this. My practical thing is that I like productivity, and I like to combine things. So when I do my morning breathing exercises, which takes from 10 to 20 minutes, but by holding the breath and deep breaths and those kind of things, which energizes me in the morning, I it gets boring by just doing those breathing exercises. So I have a journal with me. And actually, at the back of that journal, I have a bunch of questions. Half of them are related to Stoicism. And do not to be so bored when I breathe, I read at my journal. And then I'm like, oh, okay. When I'm holding my breath for like 2 or 3 minutes, I'm writing something down, right? So that's my practical thing where I combine these things. And it's not like they are super thoughts, but just by being able to put them out there. And sometimes I take that notes with me, and I'm like, oh, that was a so good idea. That's the first thing. The second thing is AI. I'm walking my dog every day, and I am recording voice messages. And I'm also have built out the system where those voice messages, I have trained that AI to understand my background, my personality, my children, my wife, many other things. And I've given it instructions. So whenever I complete that voice note, it brings me out. Were there any actionable items? Were there any ideas that I need to research more on those kind of things? And it has helped me so much, but because I enjoy the walk so much more. Sometimes I'm like, ooh, I want to go out. I wanna record this audio message. I want to go through with this. And so that kind of, I don't know, these are two specific ideas about the journaling to give people maybe something actionable, something that they can try on their own. If you want something very specific, just you can even go and do this directly with OpenAI, you can have the voice chat, and that's a part. I think that's also could be a very good thing, like a journaling, and then you can always come back with the same account, logging in from your browser, and see what you talked to that thing.
Mm, that's correct. Now, you have mentioned about this routine that you have about breathing exercises. For the audience who don't know what is breathing exercises, because it's not like you want to be a diver. So, what is it, and how does it relate to what we are talking about?
uh okay, so I haven't researched a lot about all the possible ways, but for me, what is it is that I have this like a group of thing is and I could quote some scientific papers, but for me is this: when I wake up, I don't want to like I feel like I don't want to do anything, but I'm like one breath, one breath, one breath. Then I sit down, I start to do this breath exercise. I usually go at least 10 minutes, sometimes even 15 minutes, and then when my breathing is beginning to end, I'm like I have to do push-ups, at least five push-ups, at least five push-ups. Then I do something, sometimes for 2 minutes, but sometimes for 10 minutes. I just listen to my body and I stretch, and I do different things. And then I'm like, when I'm slowly going into finishing the stretching in the morning, I'm like cold shower, at least for 5 seconds. And then I sometimes go even for like four minutes. And when I finish this ritual in the morning, my day is absolutely different than I don't do this. If for 1 week, if I'm sick for 1 week, 2 weeks, and I don't do this, it's like I feel that my body is screaming at me, telling me that something is wrong just because I don't do this. I can sleep for 4 hours, and when I do this in the morning, like I slept this night for 5 hours. I woke up at 5. I did everything that I told because I know that I will be coming on this podcast. I need to get my body into this kind of very energetic state, and that's what I do. And sometimes I do it less. Sometimes I do it more. I try to do at least five times per week. But that's I don't know how it connects with, but that connects with accountability and consistency very directly. And then I can very directly then tell you another consistent and accountable thing is for absolute majority of my calls, I participate standing, like here. I'm not sitting down because I feel that difference, and it's I feel so many times lazy, like I want to just sit down and now it's when I am during the meeting when I'm sitting down, I feel my body is telling me, get up, get up, get up. You will have better ideas, better thoughts. So I don't know, like hopefully that helps into this accountability topic.
Egil, I guess that for the breathing exercises, there is many ways to use it. I mean, you use it in terms of, as a trigger for the accountability of the days. There are some people who is more about uh, understand to keep a little bit to feel this control the flow of emotion things. So it's a little bit avoiding the autopilot, preparing us for the day. For some people, it would be more about understanding their emotions of the previous day. The cool thing is that it comes from the theory of mindfulness, which is about trying to live the moment, because in a day-to-day basis we are fucking on the flow all the time. We are doing shit instead of taking the time to reflect about what has happened, what is happening, and what should happen in the day.
Yeah.
And it is a way, like some people will do meditation, and other people, including me, do breathing exercises to control a little bit, to control the flow of emotions for the day, or even to control my level of stress, because I have been gifted with a lot of stress, by the way, or a lot of non-control of stress. So, but it is. a quite appropriate exercise for leaders to practice, and it takes from 2 minutes to 10 minutes. You take the
Yeah.
call, but the best thing is just to start, give it a shot. And there is, as you mentioned, there is a lot of research that has been conducted about the effects of mindfulness and breathing exercises on the brain. And it, there is a clear winner of something that is not difficult to start with in order to get a little bit more knowledge on ourselves. Mm.
That's the well-being part of this growth mindset. Very good. Very happy that we touched this. It's like a complete circle into looking at accountability, because the leaders, they just don't need to be accountable for their actions and their feedback, but also about their well-being. So yeah, very nice. I learned a lot from this. So this is great.
Hey Gils, any final words now that we are reaching the end of this episode regarding accountability for leaders? Is there any final advices, tips, readings for leaders in order to learn more about building the culture of accountability, based or not on the Stoic principles?
Yeah. Well, I would say this is start with yourself and understand that you are already you are perfect. People people have accomplished so much, and just be grateful for that. Be grateful for what you have, and focus on that thing, because the problem is that so many of us try to find what to fix, and we don't focus on those thousands and millions of beautiful things that we do and that we are. So my recommendation is, yes, you need to improve yourself. You need to grow, but that growth is much, much easier if you grow this and on this beautiful, strong person who has so many accomplishments, versus just, oh, I can't do this, I can't do that. So think about yourself. Where, like in airplanes, they say, put the breathing mask on yourself and then take care of the others. That's my recommendation for everyone.
Thank you very much, Egils. It was wonderful to have this discussion. My final question is, if people, leaders have questions that they want to bounce, where they want to bounce ideas with you, how can they reach you out?
uh, I would say LinkedIn. In this case, I guess we can use the LinkedIn profile. I would recommend people adding this custom message. I don't accept every person who just connects, but if you will add something related to this in that custom message, I would really love to connect with you. I'm all about community. I have 3 children. I see what happened in their lives, if they have a very good friends around or not. And the same thing for me. It's community first, people first. And if you feel that you would benefit from this conversation, and then the greater world would benefit, I'm all for it.
I will definitely put the LinkedIn link to your profiles. Thank you very much, Egils Boitmanis. It was wonderful and enlightening to have you today.
Thank you very much. This is the highlight of my week. So, woohoo, amazing. Happy New Year.